Like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat on the way in, right? Okay, BGS said he's gonna run a little late. That's okay. That's okay. It's understandable, right? Mr. Z can't chastise anyone for running late. Not Mr. Z, right? That I can't do. Okay, so we're gonna still talk about everything we're going to talk about before neoliberalism. We're gonna also talk about, when I open up the panel, we can kind of bring in why some of this black women sound the way they do, right? Their economic understanding of different things, and we could tie in Ebony K. Williams. We can tie in Kim Foster, Chrissy, Paris Milan, Real Talk with Yanni. We can tie them in to the Mouse Utopia Project. We can tie them into neoliberalism and their concepts and understanding of the economic environment, right? So I I'm probably gonna do another video on neoliberalism next time on the Black Manosphere Show of the Week. Because this one was a bit rushed, even though I knew I was gonna be Black Manosphere Show of the Week for like forever now. Shout out to the Roger Report. And and first let me shout out my other two brothers that we help coordinate things, and we help, anyway. Shout out to the Roger Report, shout out to LAR movement, right? So um yeah, so I kind of want to give us kind of a foundation to stand on. I Mr. Z didn't do a good job. I should have had Green Gorilla also coming up. Maybe if he sees that I'm streaming, maybe he'll pop up in the comments, and I'll bring him up later, and we can have him tell us about his understanding of neoliberalism, and maybe what he thinks it has done to the black community, done for the black community, maybe positively or negatively. We don't actually know how Dr. Green Gorilla will will look at that, right? So we are going to get into some things. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second, right? So, all right. I'm going to try to play a couple of clips. So once again, setting the foundation of what neoliberalism is. Y'all like, share, subscribe, hit that super chat. Definitely hit that super chat, because this video is probably going to get demonetized. You already know. Anyway, so right. And give me 1 second. Let's make sure we have. Oh, wait a minute, Mr. Z messed up because I have two videos that look like they have the same thing. Okay, let me move this one. Yeah, let's move this one. Give me 1 second, y'all. Because I thought I had something going and I didn't. Alright. This is what I'm looking for right here. Alright. Alright. Here we go. Let me share this. Give me a second. Y'all let me know if y'all can hear and see this. Hopefully Mr. Z remembers what he's doing. Okay. Hopefully y'all can see that. All right. Okay. Let's play this, and hopefully y'all can see and hear it. As a matter of fact, Mr. Z, guess what you can do? You can use your phone to look. All right. All right, everybody, give me a second, and we're going to play this, and hopefully you guys can hear this.
The A to Z of isms, neoliberalism. Friedrich Hayek, a tweedy Austrian-born economist, had one of those light bulb moments in the mid-1930s and switched on an ideology that unites its enemies in scorn, which has inspired governments and entrepreneurs down the decades, neoliberalism. The idea was built on the classical liberalism of the 18th century and a defense of individual liberty, protecting private property and the freedom of markets from external interference, taxes, regulations, levies, as much as possible. Neoliberalism argued that the market wasn't just an absence of interference, it could produce a philosophy or a way of thinking all of its own. That meant looking at the world and at transactions in daily life through the eyes of the market. You can glimpse this, for instance, when I say, I'm in the market for a beer, showing that we've internalized the idea of a market for other values. Nowadays, you probably hear the word neoliberalism used more as a term of abuse, hurled by opponents at economic globalizers, nasty bankers, or governments limiting spending on public works or welfare. The word neo, or new, has morphed into a way of signalling, I don't like this one bit. It's the nearest thing economic terminology has to a rotten tomato. But neoliberalism isn't just a dirty word, it's an entire mindset of approaches to the way state and market interact with our aspirations, emphasizing privatization over state control as the best way to deliver public services. The advent of neoliberalism led to one of the great punch-ups of economists between Hayek and his best frenemy, John Maynard Keynes. Keynes argued that government should get involved in increasing demand to
That's
keep
what we had
productivity
before
up
the Carter
and
administration,
unemployment down.
Keynesianism.
Hayek dismissed Keynes as knowing very little about economics, and he wrote a snotty book review of one
Hayek's
of Keynes'
protege
works.
was
Despite
Milton
their bickering,
Friedman,
though, their competing ideas,
or is Milton
Keynesianism
Friedman.
and neoliberalism, remain the seesaw of big thinking in practical economics. Keynesianism won for a good while after World War II, but by the end of the 1970s, public sector strikes
Exactly.
and worries about stagflation, an ugly combo of stagnation and inflation, persuaded some mold breakers to look back to neoliberalism as a way to perk up flagging economies. Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher led the way in embracing the notion, and so did a ruthless dictator, Auguste Pinochet in Chile, which rather marked down the democratic scorecard of neoliberalism. The financial crash of 2007-8 created a more testy mood towards deregulation, and neoliberalism gained a bad rep because it was taxpayers who had to bail out the banks. But there's a broader cultural reason neoliberalism gets it in the neck right now. Inevitably, it leads to such fast-paced, uncontrolled globalization because it does away with barriers to trade and to financial flows. It prizes the innovative above continuities, so you could say it puts the corporation above the nation. But the globalized world we inhabit, one of startups, the ability to move money and borrow cheaply, and companies operating across borders, owes a lot to the Austrian Friedrich Hayek and his lightbulb moment.
Thanks for
And there you go. So there's that. Let's stop sharing. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. Right? So what do y'all think about that? Any comments in the comment section? And it goes, you see what I'm saying? Keynesianism, which is Mr. Z is actually going to say this, a softer, more humanitarian version of capitalism, right? More human version of capitalism. It doesn't punch you without the glove on, right? You still get punched in the face, but at least you have the glove on, or at least the opponent has their glove on. We'll say, right? So once again, this is kind of the form of capitalism that commodifies everything, right? Everything is for sale, and as the lady was speaking, um, it's marketized everything, right? So this is something y'all have heard Mr. Z say before, and it's really interesting. Me saying commodify everything and then realizing like how much content is out there that pretty much says the same thing and actually uses the same words I use, right? So and may predate some of the things I've said before, or might be older, might be newer than some of the things I've been saying in my own personal life, but also online. And it definitely makes you think when you realize that others of note and prominence are saying the same things as you, or at least have considered the same things as you, even if they disagree, or even if they take a different take on it. I don't know what putting a price tag on everything does for the Black community, is what Mr. Z is saying. That's what I'm arguing. And I would argue that when we hear Black people speak about class in a particular way, because there is class in the Black community, right? It's something that what is a dirty word. Um, it's not something often talked about because the overall superstructure is so oppressive that it causes class compression. But even within that class compression, there is class, very little, right? You can go through classes in the Black community very seamlessly compared to other communities, right? And definitely other ethnicities and tribes and groups outside of the U.S. But when you couple America kind of trying to shy away, at least rhetorically, from a class structure, because America, the founding, air quotes, founding fathers of America were attempting to get away from the concept of monarchy and aristocracy back in Europe, like talking about class, and even when you hear class warfare, right? Even when you hear class warfare, people don't actually, especially the elites, they don't actually like to speak about it, right? Because remember, the founding of this nation was supposedly also about getting away from these very rigid class structure. Now, which is funny because then you find out that America has less upward mobility than Britain. Yeah, you heard right. America has less upward mobility and less um, I think they call it dimorphism, where you can go up and down, has less of that than Britain, a literal monarchy, right? So in America, we don't like to talk about class, right? We don't like to talk about these things in this way, but it definitely exists, right? It definitely exists. So we're going to also play Dr. Lester. I'm a PhD, and he's going to tell us a little bit about this also. So let me share this also, right? And give Mr. Z 1 second. Hopefully this works the way I want it to. All right. Actually, I'm gonna bring this back just a smidge before I play it. Right. And that's because, all right. All right. And by the way, while I'm speaking, just consider some of the things we've definitely been hearing from Black women over the past few years on the interwebs when it comes to dating, when it comes to marriage, when it comes to air quotes struggle love, right? And what they consider struggle love, right? When they use very corporatized language, when it sounds like they're commodifying men and masculinity because they are commodifying men and masculinity. Think about those things as you listen to this, and Mr. Z doesn't want to put the puzzle pieces together for you because, quite frankly, that's unfulfilling. um, just think about that. You put the puzzle pieces together for yourself, and think about these things as you're listening to this, and what does this mean for family formation, and how does this also connect to, for those of you that have heard me say this before, 26% of poor Americans being married, regardless of race, by the way. This is race neutral. 26% of poor Americans being married in America, 39% of upper middle, excuse me, 26% of poor Americans, 39% of middle class Americans, and 56% of upper middle class Americans and above are married, according to the American Enterprise Institute, AEI, which, by the way, is a very conservative think tank, right? So this is not even coming from the left trying to make an argument about economics and how capitalism is ripping families to shreds. This is from a conservative think tank and research group, right? So like, you know, um, if they're saying this, right, they're definitely, you can definitely see a tract. And by the way, not only that, exactly, Eddie Adia, AEI are neocons, exactly, right? Um, Let me not lose my train of thought. Not Oh, there we go. Not only are poor Americans less likely to get married, that's they have the highest divorce rate, right? So, which also, by the way, black men, you can also use whenever people talk about, oh, black men and black women and their low divorce rate. It's really not character flaw. It's poverty. Not only have we priced poor people, including definitely black people, out of marriage, we have also caused it to be so difficult to stay married. So not only is it difficult to get married, let's say you are religious, right? And you know your church and your congregation and your people are, hey, get married, get married. Don't look at this beautiful young lady. Y'all been talking for a little while. She's feeling you, you feeling her. Get married. Not only are you less likely to get married, you're less likely to stay married, right? Rest in peace, Kevin Samuels. As he said, once you start getting to that top 20%, Mr. Z said it too, pat myself on the back, right? Once you get to that top 20%, that's when the divorce rate falls off a cliff. That doesn't mean they still don't get divorced. That's not what Mr. Z is saying, but that's when you see the gap growing into a chasm. And then when you get to the top 10%, it grows even larger. Top 5%, it grows even larger, right? And I'm saying this specifically for this part to say this is not about character flaw, particularly in, in black in black people, yeah, Mr. Z just said black people, including black women, but particularly black men, because we know that women, black women, fall for like 80% of divorces, 70 to 80% of divorces. So we can speak about the cheating ex-husband, or the ex-husband that was a drunk, or he gambled, right? Right? Or physical, But in reality, the real issue is the money, right? And it's understandable, but if we could stop ascribing like character flaw to black men in a capitalist society where the women are deciding the women are deciding whether they say I do, right? As I was saying earlier, they're going so far with it, and shout out to Better You, they're going so far with it to that they are literally, and a few of them are literally saying, Cash App me for me to send you my number, right? So yes, we can talk about character flaw in black women for that. Yes, we can call her all type of, 10 toes, we'll say. We can call her all type of streetwalker, but a part of that also comes from the current environment, the current economic landscape, right? And the ghost said they knew he was a drunk and he gambled. Exactly. Exactly. Right. But they have to have their excuses in their back pocket for why they leave. Right. You left the toilet seat up one too many times. That's a joke I used to say. I'm gonna bring that back. Right. Brother, you left the toilet seat up one too many times, and she used that as an excuse to leave. Right. So let's listen to this. And this time, sometimes you got to play the white voices, but some black people don't believe it unless it comes from a white voice. So now we got to listen to a couple of brothers speak about this. And let's make sure we get this down. Give me 1 second. All right. All right, Mr. Z. And hopefully you guys can see this and hear it. And here we go.
I'm excited about this book. But let's start with terms, because in most of the rest of the world, people understand the term neoliberalism. In the United States, for a variety of reasons, people don't.
Yeah. So when I'm talking about neoliberalism, or when most of the rest of the world talks about neoliberalism, what they're talking about is kind of a set of institutional arrangements, public policies, and kind of common sense ideas that proposes that the market be the standard by which every institution and every aspect of human life be organized around, right? Mm-hmm. So when I'm talking about this to brothers and sisters, to Black brothers and sisters, the term I'll use, or the line I use, is from Diamonds from Sierra Leone, the remix with Kanye West and Jay-Z. And he has a line in there where he says, "I'm not a businessman, I'm a business man. Watch me handle my business." Damn. Is that idea that individuals should try to structure their lives to be as entrepreneurial as possible, and to become something akin to enterprises. Similarly, if you look at schools, churches, governments, the idea is that they should be structured like businesses, right?
So it's the destruction of any real notion of society.
It's the destruction of what we think of as a society, and it's the destruction of the concept of the public, exactly. Right? The whole idea of a public good kind of falls out.
So, we can think about people like Milton Friedman, the economist, is one of the architects of that. What about in Black America? What happened? What are you focusing on that took place in Black America?
So what happens in general, like around late 60s, early 70s, the world economy in developed countries basically falls out or bottoms out. And a whole set of policies that basically provided for a safety net in the United States and other countries, those policies get posed as having caused the problem. So what we need are a new suite of policies that basically get people to take responsibility for their own stuff. Welfare was replaced by workfare. supply side economics, or the idea that we need to significantly cut
overhaul of welfare. That's what BGS
taxes,
mentions all the
that
time.
we need to restructure governments, that we need to make cities more entrepreneurial. That gets rolled out. That happens at the same time that we see African Americans in the United States case actually gain a suite of rights, and they take control of cities like Detroit, Washington, D.C., Gary. But the bottom falls out of those cities, right? Like the moment Black people take power is the moment that these policies begin to be rolled out.
So
and
technically,
in fact,
they gave you power
some
of
ways,
cities that were
because
on fire.
Black people take power, they can be used as the excuse for why we need kind of neoliberal policies. And then, now Black people in the United States are in a lot of ways just like people in the United States in general. So some of the same forces that cause the neoliberal turn to take hold in America, United States broadly, takes hold in Black communities in the same way. And you see it in the actions and ideas of many of the first and really the second and third wave of Black mayors. You see it in the growth of the prosperity gospel in Black church communities, and you see it in a few other places as well.
And there you go. Right. Right. So how does that then inform the way we talk about family, relationships, the lack thereof in the Black community, right? How do we talk about these things now? Right? So that's the beauty of having the elders in here, right? Because Art New Style and even some of the brothers that's not as seasoned as Black Uru and BGS, but the Art New Styles and the Dr. T. Hassan Johnsons and the Dr. Green Gorillas and the Dr. Ron O'Neills and, like I said, BGS and Black Uru, right? And even brothers like A.L. Evans, they can tell you about a time before this hit or right when it hit, but the effects weren't really trucking yet. You didn't really feel it yet, right? And they can tell you what communities look like. They could tell you what the Black community looks like. They could tell you about Black businesses, right? By the way, all your little mom and pop shops out the window by the mid 80s, you could think some of this too, yes, because your uncle was on drugs. Yeah, all of that other stuff too. But this economic structure, because remember, we start taking away all of the little safety nets that help to create the mom and pop shop and to help bolster the mom and pop shop. We let all the major corporations off the leash. That's why Mr. Z put up the community post a few days ago that said entrepreneurship is at a 40-year low. Right? You want to know what happened to your mom and pop shops? Walmart happened. Right? And on the other side, the U.S. government subsidizes the low ass wages with the welfare that they claim they don't want to provide. So they let Walmart and they keep the minimum wage low and stagnant, right? To allow Walmart to pay its employees peanuts. And then it comes in on the back end and then subsidize Walmart while the Waltons walk out the back door with all the money. Right? And like, I think there is a place where Black left and Black right can meet, where we can actually talk about Black business and how to not only create Black business, but make it viable and um not make it just shark food for the mega corporations when they decide to get into a particular industry that Black people been holding down for decades. And quite frankly, that's where we are right now. It's a Black business or a Black industry until the uber wealthy white folks decide to get in on the business. And I think that Black left and Black right need to fight. And yeah, I'm asking Black right. Yes, Black conservative brothers, I'm asking you to also get in on the game and protect yourself. Because it sounds all good until the Monstars, right? Shout out to Space Jam. Until the Monstars walk in the room. Right? It sound all good until that happened. And what I'm and then I'm asking the Black left to not be so anti-entrepreneurship, because I get it because of how much of the entrepreneurship language sounds like weird ass conservative hustle culture, which which is almost is which is used as a weapon from the white right to gaslight black people, right? And some black right too, but mainly the white right to gaslight black people about why black people are in the position they're in, right? I get where the left is coming from, but I also get where the right is coming from, and we need to find this one definitely. I do think there are things that are there's no middle ground. Mr. Z, that's like I don't hear Mr. Z always say, "Well, there's a middle ground," and I understand, but I don't, right? But on this one, there has to be, because it's only a black industry until white people take it out of your hands, because they will be subsidized by the U.S. government to do so. And while they're taking it out of your hands, and this is another reason why I mentioned entrepreneurship being at a 40-year low in America, because all we hear is about how other communities are starting businesses. Mr. Z lives in one of the most diverse cities in this country, right? Definitely one of the most. Mr. Z is originally from one of the most diverse counties in this country. Most of those mom and pop, most of those businesses that y'all talking about are restaurants. They little mom and pop restaurants, right? South Asian, East Asian, right? Different groups of Latinos. Their restaurant. It's mainly restaurants. Or they sell little clothes here, little clothes there. That's mainly what it is. A little boutique here, a little boutique there, a little restaurant here, a little restaurant there, and that's not taken away from them. But when people chastise black people, including other black people, chastising black people about not starting businesses and about how other groups are so entrepreneurial, first of all, 40-year low in entrepreneurship in America. Secondly, restaurants and little boutiques, right? Which many of these people operate part time and they use their 9 to 5 money to actually operate these things, right? So I want to be very clear. This is not an anti entrepreneurial rant. This is not an anti business rant. This is look at what neoliberalism has done to mainly the black community. We're going to focus on the black community, but overall society, overall Western society, particularly America, particularly black America, snatching the money off the table, ripping up the safety nets, and then gaslighting you with rugged individuality, right? And hustle culture and entrepreneurship. And then to put the sprinkle on the cake, to put the cherry on top of the cake, over the past 15 or so years, going on maybe 2 decades, you get the gig economy. Oh, right? And by the way, keep on remembering to consider, what does this do to black family? What does this do to black potential mothers, potential fathers, and children, both born and unborn, right? What does this do, right? What do we hear? What did what's her name? Wednesday tell Tone Talks. I ain't having no kids until I'm a millionaire. And we chuckle at it, but how many women, black women, think like that? Now she also has some problematic concepts and ideas also, right? But this one in particular, what does it mean when there are women that put a price tag on their vagina? Right? And not and an insane one, right? So there's their right to do it, which Mr. Z is not against. I am not for forced monogamy or any kind of force, any of that. I'm not with it. With that, what are the societal and communal ramifications, right, of so many of these women? Look at so many of the women Mr. Z covers often on his channel. Late 20s and 30s, right? Late 20s and 30s. A generation or two ago, this is usually when people would be closing up shop. They having their third kid, they calling it a day. Their fourth kid, they're calling it a day. They're done by the age of 40, definitely by the age of 40. And yes, we know we got a couple of us got aunts and even grandmas that had kids well into their 50s. The day before menopause, right? We know those people. But for the most part, they were closing up shop within by the time they were in their late 30s, early 40s. We're having a generation, especially for me as a millennial, where we're not starting to have children. Some of these women are not starting to have children until the fourth quarter, until their late 30s, early 40s. And some of them, once again, the Ebony K. Williams, are having to freeze their eggs. Now, for all the things that we say about Ebony K. Williams, and there's a lot of negative to say, there is something sad and tragic about running out the clock, so you got to freeze your eggs. Right? And in a neoliberal society, it is going to encourage more and more of that. As I've said before, I want to make sure I say this here. We are no longer in the time of BGS, Black Uru, Art New style, right? Where you get married and having children as you enter adulthood. You get married and have children as you enter adulthood. We are now, for younger Xers, millennials, and Gen Z, right? And most likely for Generation Alpha, we are in the paradigm where having children and getting married, and definitely staying married, is at the finish line of adulting. It is at the finish line of adulting. And as you can see, with that insanely low marriage rate and birth rate, you can argue a sizable chunk, if not most people, definitely in America, definitely in Black America, the adulting process either takes too long, or they never actually finish adulting, right? And see, and look at what Indigo Flow is saying. My mom gave birth to her fifth and last child at 38. Excuse me, let's read that again. My mom gave birth to her fifth and last child at 33. I'm 38 and haven't had any children yet. Brother, I'm right behind you. I'm in a relationship right now. It's serious. It's looking like marriage. Y'all already know Mrs. Z has spoken about this. But Mr. Z is 36. I'm going to be 37 this year. I'm right behind you. Right? So this is the environment that we're living in. And Mr. Z is not about always pushing weirdo, like, gaslighting positivity, right? Sometimes you got to get deep into you got to get into what, let me sound like some of the old brothers, you got to get into the muck of it, the funk, right? That's why they call it funk music. You got to get in the nasty, the ugly. We can't just keep on closing the door on the ugly because it sounds depressing, right? Look at the George Floyd protests. When did the George Floyd protests happen? When we didn't have anything distracting us. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't anything else going on and there's no ulterior motives. We're not getting into that. Right? See, exactly. BGS said, my last child at 35. And BGS, I'm going to put in the link for just you for a little while. We'll bring in people in a little bit. Let me put the link in for BGS. Y'all give me 1 second. Give me 1 second, BGS. Let's make sure we highlight that. Okay, and we'll bring in BGS for a little bit. And Dr. Thunder, if you want to come up, definitely let me know, and you could click the link also. I'm just passing on y'all just take all the Roger Report rules and just bring them over here. So so first we'll have BGS and the PhDs if they would definitely want to come through, and then we'll bring in other people. But this link is definitely for BGS. If I can remember what I'm doing. Does Mr. Z remember what he's doing? Okay. Let's see, because I think I remember. how to do this. Oh crap! Wait a minute. Click the wrong thing. Oh, there we go. Okay, all right. Nope, not yet. All right, we're gonna have to do this another way. Wait a minute, everybody. Wait, I know how I'm gonna do this. Wait a minute. Let's see if this works. It should. Wait a minute. I might have two of me for a second. Wait. You'll give me 1 second. But yeah. Yeah, I know. It's because it's an Apple product. Goddamn Apple. Right. Okay. Let me do this. Okay, I'm echoing myself.